This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. We're coming from the city of Barcelona. We were at the place where the disputation at Barcelona took place, where the Ramban had his famous dispute with Pablo Cristiani. Now we're coming to the city of Gerona, which is the city of the Ramban and Rabbeinu Yoina. Now, as mentioned, in the year 1263, the Ramban was summoned to dispute Pablo Cristiani, and even though he won the dispute, he was ordered by the King of Aragon that he has 6 weeks to skedaddle, and the Ramban left immediately. The Ramban comes to Eretz Yisrael, and then we have this famous letter known as Iggeres HaRamban. When exactly did the Ramban write this letter? In the Sefer Mu'ulefes HaSapirim, he brings that the Ramban wrote this letter when he was in the land of Israel, when he was in Eretz Yisrael. From Acre, he wrote it to his son in Castillo, his son Nachman. However, one of the world's greatest experts in the Ramban, Rav Shavel, who published many of the works of the Ramban, says, Im Kabbalah hi nekabel. If there is a tradition that the Ramban wrote it to his son when he was in Eretz Yisrael, okay, then we'll accept it. But if we don't have such a tradition, it's very hard to believe that the Ramban wrote this letter to his son, because then his son would have been already a grown adult, and would the Ramban be writing words of Musar to a grown adult? It seems, he says, like the Ramban is addressing it to a younger child. However, many disagree with that, because there's so many commentaries on the Igeret Ramban. Igeret Ramban is a very deep work that it's very reasonable, it's very plausible that the Ramban wrote it later in life, even to an adult child. Now, if you came to the trip just to hear this, it was worth your while. The Ramban writes that any day that you read the Igeret Ramban, your prayers will be answered. Okay, so people think it's like some kind of segula. You read the letter, you daven to win the lottery, you pick the lucky numbers, and then that's how it works. If you actually study the letter, there are a number of difficulties with the letter, that if you don't know the key to crack the code, the Igeret Ramban is a sealed book. In other words, it's impossible to understand. For example, the Igeret Ramban begins with probably the most difficult dictum of all, Tisnaheg tamid l'daber kol dvarecha benachas. Train yourself to speak all your words benachas, gently. So you say, no problem, I'll speak gently, except for to him or to her. No, l'chol adam, to everyone. Yeah, but there are exceptions. No, b'choleis, there are no exceptions. There is never a time not to speak gently. Okay, that's how the Ramban begins. A few lines down, the Ramban says, Al kein afarish lecha, therefore I will explain to you, Eich tisnaheg b'midas ha'anava, kol dvarecha yiu benachas. Now, unless someone has had temporary amnesia, we got that already. That's how the letter began. Tisnaheg tamid l'daber kol dvarecha benachas. Why is the Ramban repeating himself? And it's such an obvious question, but if you don't know the answer to this question, then there is absolutely no understanding of Igeret Ramban. Here's the key. The key is, there are 4 chalokim of Igeret Ramban. There are 4 segments, and you have to be able to identify these 4 small chapters in Igeret Ramban. Part 1 is how to acquire humility. You acquire humility by speaking gently, by looking at other people and trying to see how they are in fact greater than you are. That is part 1 of Igeret Ramban. The Ramban then goes on to part 2. He speaks about the disparagement of the midah of gaiva. Now the Ramban is bothered by a question. I've explained to you how to acquire humility. So now you've acquired it. Now the question is, how do you practice it? So the Ramban gives you the formula to practice humility. The formula is continue to speak gently. So in other words, you need to speak gently to acquire humility. You need to speak gently to continue in that mode. Okay, so this is another segment, and you'll see, actually, in many editions of the Ramban, there are 4 segments. In the one I sent you, it's not broken up. Otherwise, you would have gotten the answer right away. But if you look at the Nusach, if you look back on your phones, the first segment begins, Shema b'ni musar avicha v'al titosh taras yamecha tisnahig tamid l'daber kol dvarach v'nachas. That's part 1. Part 2, Va'ata b'ni da u're'ei ki hamiskoa moyed hu b'malchus shemayim. Part 3, Al kein afarish l'cha ich tisnahig b'midas v'anava. That's not how to acquire it, how to continue in that mode. And then the Ramban gives us the formula of avodas Hashem, and that is b'chol dvarecha u'ma'asecha u'machshveisecha chasher b'libcha ki la'toim l'fnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So these are 4 segments in the Iggeres Ramban. Now, this is out of this world. Many people look for various skulos to be zocheh to Yeshuos. Everybody wants Yeshuos. Everybody wants salvation. Everybody wants nisim. Everybody wants some kind of miraculous salvation in this world. In the Bodleian Library in Oxford, they discovered the original printing of Iggeres Ramban. And it begins as follows. The Ramban says to his son, B'ni Nachman ha'ne'eman li ma'od, to my dear, trusted son Nachman. Zechar tamid ma'asai asher ra'isa ba'amadcha iti. Remember my actions, Nachman. Remember how I used to behave. V'nisei kel. Remember the miracles you saw when I was living with you back in Gerona. The Ramban lived a miraculous life. Many miraculous things happened to Ramban. The Ramban is telling his son, kid, remember the miracles Hashem did for me? V'nifla'osav asher hayu imadi u'shmai hagada asher kidei shal yadi bekama nisim asher ra'u einecha. Nachman, you know, you admit, you've never seen anyone in your life experience miracles like me, your father. You probably want to know, how could you merit having miracles in your life? Nachman, chashoy ve'libcha b'ma yizake adam b'ashara isalai. Nachman, why do you think I am zoicha to miracles more than anybody else? I'll tell you why. Tisnaheg tamid ledaber kol dvarecha b'nachas. Because I speak gently. So that completely revolutionizes the whole Iggeres Ramban. The Iggeres Ramban was a message to his son. My dear son, if you want to be zoicha to the miracles that you saw firsthand, that I am zoicha to, I'll tell you why I'm zoicha to that. I'll tell you why Hashem's miracles were always with me. Follow this formula. Tisnaheg ledaber kol dvarecha b'nachas. Says the Chidah. Chidah says the holy words of the Ramban pierce the heart, even though they're not applicable in our generation. Why? Says the Ramban, the midah of humility, says the Chidah, the midah of humility is no longer relevant in our generation. You know why? We're so nothing that you can't be an anav anymore. There's no such thing as an anav. What's an anav? An anav is a great person who says, you know, all of my greatness, all my talents, and all my ability, it's all from HaKadosh Baruch Hu. Says the Chidah, we're not great enough anymore to truly be humble. Humility is a thing of the past. In order to be humble, you have to first be great. But anyway, the Chidah writes that the piercing words of the Ramban enter the heart and change a person. By the way, does anybody know what is the most oft repeated word in the Iggeres Ramban? Little trivia question. The word leiv. The word leiv. 14 times. Because the objective of Iggeres Ramban is to purify the heart. In any event, the Ramban passes away in Eretz Yisrael, and there's a tradition in the Sefer Shalshelos HaKabbalah that the Ramban's Talmidim asked, Rebbe, how are we going to know when you pass away? So Ramban said, go to the gravestone of my mother. When a crack appears in my mother's gravestone, that will be a siman that I went halachti la'olami. And sure enough, in the year 1270, a crack appeared in the gravestone of the Ramban's mother, where he ascended to heaven, Yud Aleph Nisan, in the year 1270. Zechusa Yagen Aleinu. Amen.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.